Welcome to Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast. This is Bruce Hutchin, host and executive producer. Each week you will hear tips, techniques, strategies, and personal stories from some of the best and funniest whitetail hunters in North America. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you do, tell a friend on social media. If not, tell me and I'll make it better. Thanks for listening, folks. Hey, folks, we got a new sponsor. It's called Buckwild Coffee. What's so special about Buckwild Coffee? Well, a gazillion people go to Starbucks every day and drink coffee. Well, why shouldn't Buckwild Coffee offer you light, medium, or dark roast with free shipping? All you have to do is go to whitetailrendezvous.com, go to shop, and order your coffee, and I'll ship it out for free. Hey, thanks so much for visiting Buckwild Coffee. The best brew in the West, the best brew around the campfire, the best brew in the hunting shack, the best brew anywhere. Buckwild Coffee. Get yours today. This is Whitetail Rendezvous, episode number 403. On today's show, we're heading out to Iowa. We're going to meet up with Extreme Element Outdoors. Emmitt Enyeart is one of the main characters, and he is a character, and he's a heck of a hunter. They love that. Avid bow hunter and muzzleloader hunters. What's this all about? Well, it's about persistence, dedication, scouting, and doing it all on DIY. Yeah, Emmitt hunts DIY in Iowa, and he's taking some pretty dandy bucks. One of them, you're going to hear his story, and of the Iowa buck and also a Missouri buck. So sit back, relax, and enjoy some insider tips from Extreme Element Outdoors. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host. We're heading to Iowa. We're going to connect with Extreme Element Outdoors, Mr. Emmitt Enyeart. Emmitt, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you because I've seen some pictures of some of the bucks you put down, and let's not tarry at all, but let's jump right into, you had a 2016 bow kill, and then during 2017 late season, you had another bow kill. So you went back to back. Let's talk about the 216 buck, and then we'll talk about the muzzleloader buck that you took with your bow.
Alrighty. So the buck I got here in Iowa, it was actually in 2016. It was during the heart of the rut on November 8th. It was actually a morning that I really wasn't expecting to see much. It was hotter than it had been. It was super humid, and it was like the exact weather conditions you don't want for the rut. But for some odd reason, at about 9:30, the bucks started moving. It was real odd. It was like it was a real slow morning, and all of a sudden, I seen two bucks crossing a cut grass field, moving from one timber to the other. And I was running the camera, so I was trying to get some good footage. I hadn't gotten too much footage of it, a lot of bucks. And the more the merrier. So I decided to try to rattle one of them in. And coincidentally, I'm rattling at him, and I'm filming him. And lo and behold, right behind me, this buck walks in to my horns. He came in out of the south, and it was a complete shock. But it was a good shock. And I knew it was a shooter immediately, so I got the bow ready, got the camera on him, and he didn't present a shot. He was kind of moving through, and it was kind of shocking because most of the bucks that I rattle in, they come in almost right to the base of the tree. They'll come right into the base of the tree and almost get to busting you. But he kind of was a little eerie of that and was moving around in some stick stuff. And he didn't offer a shot till about 40 yards. And I put a good shot on him and gave my dad a call. Dad came in, started tracking for a little bit, and it was just one of those great memories where you found him where you like almost 20 yards from where he shot. And the hard thing was he ran into some cedars, so I couldn't see where he went down. And it was a real exciting moment, and you could spend the time in the outdoors, and then your dad was there and he found it for you. And it was just never killed a buck at that kind of distance before. I knew I was locked in from practicing at 40 yards, but I had never actually harvested anything at that kind of distance before. So it was a really exciting hunt, to say the least. And it was when you least expected, I guess. The best way to put it.
Let's go back, Emmitt, and talk about, okay, why was the stand there? Why were in the tree that time of day, in that day? Talk to me about the weather conditions and talk to me about why you were rattling.
So the reason I was rattling was because I saw those two younger bucks out in the field, and I was just trying to get them on film. And I rattled at them. I got some of their reactions, and they weren't too interested in it. But as I was rattling, this buck came in behind me. And the reason I was in that stand was it was the same stand I had harvested the buck I did in 2015 archery season. It was in that same stand during the rut on November 7th. So it was a great morning spot. It's in like a open patch of timber that borders cedars, basically from its south and its east side, and then on the north side there's a cut grass field that leads to another real thick patch of timber and cedars. So it was like some real good bedding area that these bucks will go through and scent check for does, and they'll kind of cruise around in. And it's a real good morning spot. It has not been known to be a real good spot in the evening, but it ended up being a really good spot for the past 2 years, to say the least. Like I said, on November 7th in 2015, and then on November 8th in 2016. So the difference was, though, in 2015 on November 7th, the weather was just perfect. You had some frost in the ground. It was below 30. It was great rut conditions. And then on November 8th in 2016, I want to say it was in the 50s. I basically all I had on was just a jacket in the tree stand, and I was almost sweating from just because I was getting too hot from that. And I was thinking to myself, there's no way I'd see anything. But that's what's funny about the whitetails during the rut. It's just when you least expect it, that's when they really like to show themselves.
Now, talk about the rut period. Now, we have, pre-rut and post-rut, and then you have the seeking and the chasing and the lockdown phases. So, November 8th, what phase of the rut is that in Iowa?
Some like to say that it's earlier, but most would agree that it's probably right around the heart of it. A lot of the more mature bucks tend to really like to show themselves later in the rut, towards like November 11th on, probably November 11th to November 20th. You see a lot more of those big bucks moving. But to see a lot of action, I really like to say there's like a 4-day span that goes around November 7th. So like from November 3rd to November 11th. That's my favorite time to be in a tree stand, because you see the most action. And while the mature bucks really like to roam around, it seems like during, I'd say like November 15th in that kind of area, the action doesn't seem like it's as amped up as it is right in that heart of like November 7th, November 6th, 5th, 4th, and so on. So I like to call the heart of the rut basically November 7th, November 8th.
So you're north of Des Moines and south of Minneapolis, near I-35. So does it change much? Because I go to Buffalo County, I hunt Buffalo County and other counties in Wisconsin, but I always start in Buffalo County, and I want to be in my tree stand October, Halloween. I just love hunting Halloween. I'll stay in the stand the whole day, and then I just have to figure it out from there. And that seems, you're talking about, the 8th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. So that's a week after I like to be in the stand. I wonder what the difference is, because I usually see, bucks on Halloween, depending on the weather. Definitely if a cold front's come through, it's, game on. Even if it doesn't, I still see mature bucks roaming around. So I'm just thinking, trying to correlate, and I'm only a couple hundred miles, north east of you. So I'm just trying to figure out, okay, what's the difference? And hey, listeners, if you think about that, send me an email at whitetailrendezvous@gmail.com, and let's start talking about that, because that's one subject I'm going to be talking about this summer with all the guests. So okay, so 2016, you were in a hot stand. You were in the money stand, as I'd call it, and
absolutely the Monday morning stand.
The Monday morning stand. So some young bucks were out there just kind of messing around, and the big guy, he might have smelled them. Could he have smelled those young guys out in the field, or was the wind not in your face?
He could have. He could have, but the wind was actually blowing out of the east to the west, so it's kind of perfect for me. The deer were in the north and the deer were in the south. So it was. The big one came out of the south, and the two little ones were out in the field to the north. So going east to west was actually kind of perfect for that situation. And I think he could have. I mean, he might have seen them because I don't know, but I think he was more responsive to the antlers. Or at least that's what it seemed like. I think he might have been just in the area and heard some antlers banging and decided, oh, I'll just go check that out.
What was his age class?
So, I never did get a true age class by the body size. I'd say he was probably about a 4.5.
Okay, so we're talking about a mature deer. He's coming to investigate. He's kind of quizzical. Does are definitely getting bred, right?
Yep, the does are definitely getting harassed, to say the least, that week.
Right, and so we're in the chasing phase. We're not in the lockdown because he didn't. If he was locked down, he'd be hanging out someplace for the doe, waiting for her to be, ready to be bred. So,
absolutely.
So the seeking, we're running around, but now we're chasing because we're looking, and that's when bucks. I mean, they can travel 5 miles or more.
Oh yeah.
They just go, and that's when the surprises come. Have you ever been surprised by a buck you just never seen? None of your buddies have seen, and all of a sudden there he is.
So that's the funny thing that so October 31st is a great date for the rut. It's just starting to it's heating up. I love that date too, and I like to hunt that day on the properties I hunt around here in Ames. Now, when like November 7th, November 8th hit, I normally go down to southern Iowa on some public ground and private ground and hunt that hard, looking for deer that are coming from other properties. So yes, the buck I shot in archery this past year, he was a surprise, but that's because I wasn't running cameras down there. And then the same thing with the buck the year before. They were both surprises, but on like October 31st, it's when I hunt hard on the properties that are around Ames, and I run cameras there. So I hunt hard for those bucks that are just starting to that are rutting here in Boone County, Story County, and I got pictures of them. So to say it's a surprise, yes, but when I wasn't running trail cameras down there on that public ground, I guess it could be considered a surprise. So maybe something to do in the future here. I might start running some trail cams down there. But other than that, I kind of skeptical on public ground.
Yeah, trail camera. I don't care what kind of chain or whatever cable you put on. People steal them. I mean, they just do.
Absolutely.
But here's the question, and I'm sure the listeners are asking the same question. Okay, so you got some good hunting right around the neighborhood where you live. But then you're going to drive X number of miles to X place. You don't have to say where you were, but you go so many miles down, and you do that because
it's because I feel like down in southern Iowa, even on this public ground that I hunt, it's not near as pressured as it is in the areas here in Boone and Story County. A lot of the hunters around here just like to hang a tree stand and get up in the tree during the rut. But so all of a sudden, I'll be hunting a property in Boone that I was just hunting from October 1st to October 20th. And then all of a sudden I find that there's 5 other guys in a tree stand in the area. And while it doesn't hurt me necessarily, it seems like there's more deer down south. If you look at the doe allotment tags here in Iowa, you can kind of speak for the deer numbers that are down south compared to the deer that there are in central and northern Iowa. But I just find that there's more deer, there's more chance of movement, and I can't say there's more chance of movement. There's a lot of movement that goes around all over the state. But just down south, I don't feel like there's near as much pressure, and I like to be a little bit more secluded when I get in that time of the year.
So we're talking south of Interstate 80 and east or west of I-35.
That would be east. So it's like the southern. This one was actually in Des Moines County, but I do a lot of hunting in Davis and Van Buren County as well, which are the southeastern side of the state.
Because a lot of people have always told me I hunted north of Omaha in the Lost Hills area. We did really fine. We had a great hunt, took some great bucks. All were Pope young bucks and or larger, and so I know Iowa is great. In the warm-up, we were talking about, man, I'm bummed because it takes me 3 or 4 years to get an archery tag. I don't like that at all.
Yeah, as a resident of Iowa, I'm a big fan of it, but I can understand as a non-resident why you wouldn't be. I mean, I completely understand because it's a great state for whitetail, and I think that one of the reasons it's so great is because of how the DNR handles out-of-state tags. And the only reason I'm a big fan of it is because I'm a resident. But I know I hear your pain. I got some great friends that are from Pennsylvania that they'll buy preference points every year, and they'll come every 3 years, and they'll do some archery hunting. And for anybody who wants to hunt Iowa, I think the best time to do it is during the rut. If you're coming from out of state, I think that's where you should say you should get an archery tag and come to Iowa for the rut. It's unlike none other.
Okay, let's switch it up to 2017. So on November 8th, you took a very nice buck, and then you took Mr. Wonderful in January. What date was that in January?
That was actually January 6th.
Let's share the story about that one.
Okay, so that one's a funny story. I haven't had much luck in the late season because we don't own property. We just acquired property for the first time this year. So we'll start running food plots, but I never really get to hunt a food source unless it's like alfalfa or a cover crop that the farmer plants. Because most of the time I'm hunting public or private ground, and obviously if we don't lease it or own it, we don't get to put food plots in. And so for the late season, it's always been it's been tough for me because you're not hunting a food source. And this year, one of the properties I had permission to hunt out in Boone had a cover crop of turnips, and basically there was a
Whitetail Rendezvous is pleased to announce a partnership with GoHunt.com. Who's GoHunt.com? Well, if you're a DIY hunter, you need the information at GoHunt.com/insider. Why? Because it provides 4,200 profiles, every unit, every species, and every season. Furthermore, they give in-depth analysis, interactive maps, unit access, and seasonal trends. Draw odds are very important, and they give you the most accurate information in the business. All this is available when you go to GoHunt.com/insider. Make sure you use promo code WR when you join Insider. You'll get a $50 gift card for GoHunt.com Gear Shop. All in all, if you're hunting out west in 2018, GoHunt.com Insider is where you need to be to get all the research information. When you use promo code WR, Whitetail Rendezvous receives a small commission from GoHunt.com.
Cut cornfield that led to it, and then there was some thick bedding area which I had permission to hunt on that was bordering that cut cornfield. So basically, these deer would come out of this thick bedding area. They'd cross this cut cornfield, and they'd go to the turnips. And so we just had a snowfall the day before. And while the weather, the temps were cold, but they weren't super cold. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go out and try to get a doe with my bow here in the late season. I think that'd be pretty cool. Try to do that on camera. And lo and behold, I go to hunt a doe, because I normally see does during the late season. I very rarely see bucks with the amount of pressure they get in the areas that I hunt. They just don't like or at least the ones that I'm after. They don't like to show themselves till after dark. And so I was going out to hunt some does, and what do you know? Two little bucks walk out of this thick stuff. I'm hunting on the edge of it in this cut cornfield, and they're on their way to that cover crop turnip field. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, there's some good footage. So I start filming them, and then right behind them, the buck that I harvested came out, and he was a great buck. I knew immediately he was a shooter. I had pictures of him, and he presented a shot. He was kind of feeding around in the cut corn, kind of meandering his way around, and he offered a shot. I think it was 32 or 33 yards, and just punched it. And he didn't run too far at all. He ran about 50 yards and crashed in the corn. So it was a real exciting night. And with me being colorblind, that's normally my problem. I can't track blood. So to see them go down like that and like be able to actually track a deer myself, even though it's not tracking it, but it was pretty exciting. I've never been able to track blood. I always have to have somebody come with me to, get on the deer. So to see him go down, it was a real exciting feeling. And especially of all times, I wouldn't have expected it. Those mature deer, they really, like I said in the past, the places I've hunted, they don't like to show themselves till after dark because I can't control the pressure. And
do you use hang-ons or climbers, or what's your stand setup?
I like to use a Lone Wolf Assault. lone wolves are my favorite stand. They're high quality, and I've never had an issue with them. I really like my lone wolf. I actually during the rut, I won't use a climber. I have used a climber before. I do like climbers, but I just like using my assault with 3 steps, and that way I can just, if I want to do an all day sit, I can just set it up, and then if I need to get down to go do something, I can. So as a climber, there's times I just feel like I'm strapped to the tree, and I can't. And there's very rarely times I need to get down, but I just feel more comfortable when I'm in my assault. It's basically a hang on with 3 climbing sticks, and it works awesome. It's lightweight. I can get in and out of stands easily. I can move my stand whenever I want. And as like a college student, I don't have too many stands to work with, so I'm constantly, like especially during the rut, I'm constantly hanging that stand, taking it down, moving it to a new spot, to a new hollow. It's been a great asset to have on my side, and I highly recommend them for anybody who's looking into getting a tree stand. They're great. I love them.
What's the length of your climbing sticks?
The length, they'd probably be around, I'd say probably maybe around 30 inches,
okay,
more or less.
Not quite 3 feet each times. So you got 9 feet plus, so you got 9 feet plus how high can you step off the ground, or do you use a screw in just to get you going?
I can only get about 4. I can get about 4 feet off the ground. I normally like to really stretch those things out because the higher, the better I feel.
Right.
I like to get up high in the tree, but at the same time, if I really need to, I'll carry forged climbing sticks in. If there's a tree that I really want to get high up in, but most of the time I'll just run 3, and I'll normally put like 4-foot spacings, 3 to 4 foot spacings on each. I kind of look like a monkey getting up into the stand, but I use a safety line, and everything works out pretty nicely.
Okay, so you got 3 climbing sticks, but you're taking another 2, 3. You said 3 feet, so you're getting up there 3. That's 18 feet, 15 feet.
Yeah, yep, right around there.
Okay, and so how do you put your safety rope in?
So I get up in the tree. Well, first off, I will get my climbing sticks up, and I will, as I'm getting them up, I'll continue to put that lanyard up, my safety rope, and then once I get up there, I'll lock in, and then I will attach the safety rope to the very top, so that way it's constantly there. And then as I'm getting down, I'll hook onto the safety rope, and then come down, basically using that as after I unhook to the tree.
Sure. Okay. No, because that's one thing, we all need to just be safe. I can remember the days we had screw-in steps. I mean, just the stuff we did was just completely crazy, but we did it. And, it worked. But with more and more people, the odds sort of kind of tilt against us, especially if you're setting up a stand, if you're running a gun and setting up a stand or taking it down in the dark. Makes things even more interesting as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely, yeah. It's safety is priority, and my dad has definitely stressed that to me. He's actually a safety engineer, and safety comes second to none. It's definitely the first priority whenever, especially using a tree stand, and almost any aspect of hunting. You're constantly working with weapons, and safety is definitely got to be a primary focus.
Well, let's go back to the setup of the January of 2017. So you had them on camera. So did you have them early in the season, late? Tell me about your, the trail camera album that you had on this there, and he was on your hit list, no doubt.
So basically, I had moved the trail camera onto what was a scrape. I had my trail camera on this scrape line for most of the season. I was actually patterning this 12 point for most of the year, and I had a close encounter with him, but he never showed himself. When I went back and checked the camera, he was right there. And so I kept the camera there all year. And while that 12 point disappeared, the 10 points I ended up harvesting, he came in right after the rut, and he kind of stuck around. And I think it's because of that covered crop turnip field. Those deer in that area didn't have any food sources. There have been a few small alfalfa fields, and I think they really like those turnips when it gets cold. And it was a great area for them to kind of bed, not too far from where they were trying to go to. And I think what happens is they get there, they kind of settle down, and depending how cold it is or whatnot, whatever dictates them getting up and going, he just kind of read the script from the trail camera. He was walking down that scrape line, and bam, January 6th, he decided to show himself before dark.
Now, where your tree is that on a fence row, or is that on the funnel, a pinch point? Tell me about the setup of the stand.
So basically, the stand was was set up on the edge of a cornfield, that a cut cornfield, and it had cedars with a hollow. I should say this, a hollow behind me, which would then to the west, and there was thick cedars, and a bunch of thick jaggers, and just good deer bedding that kind of bordered both sides of that hollow, and then it went to another hollow. And I know it's kind of confusing over the phone. But what happens is between these two hollows, there was thick cedars, and he would make his way between the two into those cedars. And there was like a little bit of a scrape line that I had been hunting earlier that year. So I kind of set up closer to the field edge there. And he basically walked right off that scrape line and showed himself right before he got into that field. Well, he got into the field, but he showed himself before he got into the field. And so I was kind of like setting up, right, because I can't set up in the middle of a cut cornfield unless I was using a blind, but I wanted to get up in a tree, and he showed himself coming out of his bedding area and going to his food source, kind of like what I predicted he would have done. Now, I didn't predict he was going to do it before dark. That's why I was going to harvest the doe, because I normally never had seen those deer before dark. I normally get my trail cam pictures of them after dark, and, around 2 a.m., 1 a.m., it'd be times like that. So it was a surprise, but it was no surprise that he was there.
So you knew the deer was there. It's just a matter of, for whatever reason, we haven't uncovered that, but you already had some bucks out in the field, and then he decided to saunter out pretty early, because how close to closing time was it?
It was probably about there was probably about 20 minutes left until legal shooting light.
So that's pretty early.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, it was surprisingly early, but he did have to cover a 40-acre square of cut cornfield to get to where he was going, and he normally he probably wouldn't have showed himself into that turnip field till once it got dark. I think he was just going to kind of stick around that edge of that cornfield close to his bedding area, because those other two bucks were already a good ways ahead of him, and he just wanted to stick down there kind of close to his bedding area where he felt a little bit more secluded. And I think once it got dark, he was gonna make his way up to his desired food source.
Well, that's interesting, and learning points, folks. One, you got to be there. Two, Emmitt had good success on public land south of where he is, and then in the January season, everybody kind of forgot about it. They're playing football or basketball.
Right.
They're not hunting anymore, and all of a sudden, the pressure goes away, and the deer know that. And so late season is a great time to hunt. The only thing I don't like about it is it really gets cold. So you have to get one of those heater suits or whatever, especially if you're going to sit, any length of time. But the thing is, know your bucks and know who's around, and then, spend time thinking about what they're going to do. Obviously, Emmitt, pretty familiar with where the buck lives, and the potential for him, to show up, even though he was, hunting does. He got a big surprise that evening. That's great. Let's spend. We've got just a couple of minutes more that we're going to spend. Let's talk about Extreme Element Outdoors, and why don't you tell the folks a little bit about that? Then we're going to wrap the show.
All right. So Extreme Element Outdoors, I started here last April of 2016, and it's basically a group of guys from here in Iowa and also in Pennsylvania that have a true passion for whitetail. And we just decided, you know what, we live in a great state of Iowa, and which we also live in Pennsylvania, but 4 of us live in Iowa, and we thought, you know what, why not just try to do a little bit of filming? I'm sure that it just makes hunting more fun. And so in a way we thought, let's just try something. And we started off an Instagram account, and that's kind of blown up. And then we've got a Facebook account. We have a website that's in progress right now. That should be up within the next few months. And what we're going to do is start uploading our videos kind of like Midwest Whitetail does, and do weekly updates, because while we would love to hunt for a living, there's 7 of us. 6 of us got day jobs, and then I'm in college. So we get to hunt on limited time just like everybody else does. We're just your average hunter, but we live in a great state, and just kind of thought, you know what, let's try filming and see where it goes with that. So we just kind of like built on our success in the past few years and decided to start something.
That's great. And I know Bill Winke has done a fabulous job, growing his company. And he started off not much different than you guys. I had a dream, he had a passion, and he's made it work. And so, you've got every opportunity to, carve out your slice. And it's interesting. The digital world has opened up a lot of platforms that you really, the Outdoor Channel, Sportsman Channel, Hunt TV, or Pursuit Channel. Hey, they're all great places, but a lot of guys will never have the money to be on those type of shows or have access to that type of money. So a lot of guys are doing it the way you're doing it. So that's I'm happy for you guys. Hey, if you just mentioned Facebook, how does people get a hold of you on social media or your soon-to-be website?
So we've got multiple ways of getting a hold of us. We've got email, which is extremeelementoutdoors@gmail.com. And then we also got messages on Facebook. We can get messages on Instagram. Once we get a Facebook up, we'll have a contact us link that basically will be able to, if you have any questions or want to get a hold of us, you could just fill out a form and we get it immediately. So there's multiple ways right there to get a hold of us. Yeah.
Okay, so Element Outdoors is the Facebook page and the YouTube channel. And what about Instagram? What's your handle there?
It's Extreme Element Outdoors. Extreme Element Outdoors on Instagram. And on Facebook, it would be facebook.com/Extreme Element Outdoors. And then like I said, our email is extremeelementoutdoors@gmail. Now the
YouTube channel.
The YouTube would be Extreme Element Outdoors as well. We got a few videos up. I did a little trailer of some of the bucks I saw this past year, and if anybody's listening, it's not a bad video. There's a lot of different bucks that you can see. There's one that I rattled in that I kind of look back on, and I'm thinking, why didn't I shoot him? But
that's great.
So it was a good year, real good year.
Well, yeah, and I look forward to staying in touch with you. And you get an invitation to invite all the rest of your crew to be on Whitetail Rendezvous. The process. So, send them out an invite, and love to get all the guys on your team. I enjoyed talking to you tremendously, Emmitt, and you told good stories and gave some good insight. So, on behalf of thousands of listeners across North America, to Whitetail Rendezvous podcast, we appreciate you being on the show today.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it, Bruce. I really did.
Hey, we got a special episode in and special because Mr. Sean Bailey, host of Game On, Prep the Plate, found for the last couple of years on the Food Channel. It's mainstream cooking wild game. And Sean's got a lot of stories about where the recipes came from. And a couple came from his great-great-grandfather. So sit back, relax, and take some notes because some of these recipes are going to have your mouth watering. I remember. Hey, folks, we got a new sponsor. It's called Buckwild Coffee. What's so special about Buckwild Coffee? Well, a gazillion people go to Starbucks every day and drink coffee. Well, why shouldn't Buckwild Coffee offer you light, medium, or dark roast with free shipping? All you have to do is go to whitetailrendezvous.com, go to shop, and order your coffee, and I'll ship it out for free. Hey, thanks so much for visiting Buckwild Coffee. The best brew in the West, the best brew around the campfire, the best brew in the hunting shack, the best brew anywhere. Buckwild Coffee. Get yours today. On the show that, man, I couldn't wait for lunchtime.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.